Hello and welcome to Viewpoint. I'm Vladimir Solohup. On March 21st, 22nd, the Russian court is delivering a verdict in the criminal case of Ukrainian fighter pilot Nadiya Savchenko. Join me now to discuss the campaign for the support of Nadiya Savchenko is the journalist and coordinator of Let My People Go campaign, Ms. Maria Tomak. Ms. Tomak, welcome to Viewpoint.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Tomak, the Russian court is reading the verdict as we speak. Can you tell us, are there any illusions about the outcome of this trial and the verdict?
I think we had no illusions, actually, after the verdicts in other cases of Ukrainian citizens detained in Ukraine. I mean, Alexei, Kolchenko and Afanasyev and all the others verdicts which we have now. We have about, I think, 8 or even 9 verdicts at the moment. Personally, me and my colleagues, we had no illusions. I think that trial will recognize Nadia Savchenko as guilt and will convict her at least to 20 years of imprisonment. The main question now is what actions will be taken after that decision by Ukrainian state, by Ukrainian officials, whether they will make enough efforts, put enough efforts to release her.
But obviously, to have her, I don't think this will be the release. It will be either extradition or exchange of prisoners. Obviously, to make this happen, some effort, something has to be already been done by the Ukrainian government at this stage. Do you see that Ukrainian government is doing something right now?
I think, and I see that Ukrainian government is quite active in all the official steps which had to be taken. I mean, the activity of consulars of Ukrainian embassy in Russian Federation. I see how do they work in other cases, and they're really active, especially those who work in Rostov-on-Don. These people are really working very hard, and they do their job. But another level is the political level, the level of the negotiations. And I think that's the only and the most possible way. It's not even the extradition, which can be initiated by a Ministry of Justice. It's very formal approach. It's a very formal way. And in that case, Nadia Savchenko or other prisoners, they have to sit in the jail here in Ukraine. It's just not possible. And I'm not sure that Russia will agree on that. But the other way is...
so basically what you were seeing, the possible scenario is the exchange of prisoners, yes, rather than extradition.
It's the other scenario, actually, is the political decision, it's the political agreement on the level probably of the presidential administrations in Russia and Ukraine. And we had a very similar case with Starkov, a Russian officer, a military officer, which was exchanged to Ukrainian officer Kherchanov. He was actually not in Russia, but in DPR and LPR, but still it's not the big difference. The scheme is the same, and I think that it will be the better way to release Savchenko.
Mr. Tomak, do you see any activities of the Ukrainian government towards the release of the other prisoners? Kolchenko, Sentsov, Karpyuk, there is a number of them. Mm-hmm. And the verdict has already been delivered in those cases. So is Ukrainian government doing something to release those guys?
Again, yes, they do. They do all the formal steps, all the necessary steps which has to be taken. But on the other way, I think that Nadia Savchenko's verdict can be kind of key moment after which the very important decision has to be taken regarding Savchenko, but also regarding the other prisoners. So my prediction is that after Savchenko's verdict, the real negotiating process can start, and we will have a kind of agreement about Nadia as well as other people. But I have to say that not in all the cases verdicts are already there. For example, in Karpyuk and Klich's case, it's the trial is ongoing still, and in Litvinov case, the court is ongoing as well. And I'm not saying even about the Crimean cases, because it's the separate problem, because, it's very complicated. It's not so easy to negotiate about those people, because Russia perceives them as as Russia's citizens, and it makes things much more complicated.
Ms. Tomak, several months ago, actually, when we were talking to one of the lawyers on the defense team of Nadiya Savchenko, Mr. Ilya Novikov, he said that from the legal standpoint, from the technical standpoint, in order to start even the negotiations about the exchange of prisoners, there has to be the appeal. Once the verdict is delivered, there has to be an appeal. The Russian courts will most likely overrule the appeal, so the verdict will remain in place. And only after the appeal, some negotiations can take place. Is this still the case? Do you think there will be an appeal, during which the verdict will be approved by the Russian Court of Appeals?
I think that it is quite a complicated problem, because, as it was stated by Nadiya Savchenko herself, the defense will not appeal after the verdict. But on the same time, we know the precedent even from the times of the Cold War, when these kind of exchanges of the prisoners were taken only after the verdict. So I think that's the main step. After that step, we will have a kind of decision anyways. I think that Russia, after all, will have to face the great pressure from the side of international community, and I think that will make Putin sooner or later take the decision about Savchenko. But one of the main challenges which I see is that Kremlin will require not someone, from among the prisoners in exchange of Savchenko, but
Ukraine has two officers of the Russian army.
Yes, but I predict that Russia can say, okay, you will have the officers, we can exchange them for some other people, but we want to have, for example, the lift of the sanctions. So I think that they like this kind of...
So they'll be asking a very high price on Nadia Savchenko's release.
I'm sure, yes. Taking into account how important is the figure of Savchenko, they will probably ask something more important, more expensive, so to say, than just some persons.
Ms. Tomak, if we can talk about the trial of Nadia Savchenko in general, and as we discussed already, there is a number of high-profile political prisoners currently on trials in Russia. Why Nadia Savchenko case is so huge, is so big? Why Nadia Savchenko was chosen as the main victim?
That's my... I think about it as well all the time, because the rest of the cases are not less brutal than this one. But of course, Nadia is special because she's a woman, because she is very much interconnected with the war of Russia against Ukraine, and her kidnapping was made in the context of this war and by the people, as it was explored during the trial process, of the people which are very much interlinked with the Kremlin, for example, and with different far-right groups in Russia. So it's very much, it's a sign. It's a symbolic case, but it is very much, actually other cases are not less brutal, and there are lots of human rights violations in that cases. And for example, there were no very significant for example, beatings or tortures. In the case of Savchenko, it's very good. But in the other cases, we face really awful attitude towards these people who were arrested.
Mr. Tomak, if you allow my final question very briefly, if possible. We just discussed with one of the experts this case. And what this expert voiced, a very interesting opinion, very interesting thought, that some people are surprised that the Ukrainian government has not opened a criminal investigation into the kidnapping of Nadiya Savchenko. Are you of the same opinion? Are you also surprised that this hasn't happened? And if so, do you plan to push the Ukrainian government to do that?
You know, we faced a huge problem with opening the criminal case about the kidnapping, for example, of Klich and Karpiuk, because we were dealing very closely with this case, since it did not bring so much attention as Nadiya Savchenko's case. And I can say about this case that it was very much complicated to open the criminal investigation, but I have to underline that this is the necessary thing for example, establishing the so-called blacklists, sanctions list against those people who are responsible for kidnapping these people, for torturing them, and for these made-up criminal cases.
So basically, you're also expecting the Ukrainian government to open the criminal investigations into the kidnappings?
Yes, sure.
Understood.
They have to do.
Well, let's see if Ukrainian government follows the pressure from the NGOs. Ms. Tomak, many thanks for joining us today. We were discussing the trial of Ukrainian fighter pilot Nadiya Savchenko in Russia with journalist and coordinator of Let My People Go campaign, Ms. Maria Tomak. I'm Vladimir Solhub. Thank you for watching Viewpoint. Right, thank you very much.